there was I saw a thing on Twitter yesterday about someone tweeted saying, where does Stitch's arms go when he puts them in? So obviously he has 4 arms, right? He has 4 arms, doesn't he? But they're not always out.
Yeah.
So he tucks them away. And there's, in the actual art book of Lilo and Stitch, there's like a skeletal breakdown of where he puts his arms. And he tucks them behind his back.
Oh.
They like fold in and they rest against his spine. Isn't that interesting?
Hello. And welcome to Garden Colour.
There feels like there needs to be some smooth jazz there. We discuss everything animation, video games, and digital drawing.
I am your Morgan Freeman of hosts, Josh.
That is awful. That is awful. I feel like there needs to be some. Yeah, it really does need some like smooth jazz, or like something like Moby just playing in the background while you talk. I am your.
Or just like cut out all sounds and just be like ASMR, just like Josh.
I hate it. I am your, amazing but in a new location host, Tyler.
Do you know what? Yeah. I was thinking as well, because you've got your light in that way, and it's sort of like split in the middle. You kind of look like a strawberry smint.
That's what?
A strawberry smint.
Strawberry smint?
Yeah.
I actually think I know what you're all about. That's horrific. Where did you... I knew that was it, yeah. Why?
I bought some yesterday and I was like, oh, as soon as it would change that colour, I was like, it looks like a smint. Like, in my head, I was like, it looks like a smint. How have you been?
I've been not too shabby. I'm in a new location today. Sadly, my desk chair broke. So I don't have anything to sit at my desk at. So I'm actually on my sofa, which, do you know what? I'm vibing. Like, this is great. I'm living my best life today. Code and colour, but in comfort. Code and comfort today. That's what we're saying. That is what we're saying. But I'm good. What have I been doing? Playing a lot of Starfield. Love it. Love it so much. I play a lot of Starfield. I've just not finished the story like you.
Spoilers.
How's that a spoiler? I've finished it. No, I've not finished it. I've finished a lot of side quests and most of the faction quests now. Absolutely adore it. Love it so much. I haven't watched anything animated, I don't think. I have got a series of animated films to watch next week. I have reached out to a friend and asked him to send me a list of some animated films to watch because I kind of want to broaden my horizon a little bit. And he delivered. I've got films from all over the world as well to watch. And I'm away next week, so I will be watching them. But yeah, other than that, not really a lot else, to be honest. I don't think I've done any drawing. No, I haven't. No, I talked about that last week. You don't.
Did you?
Yeah, the Halloween ones. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Yeah, I did that last week. Donut. How have you been, buddy?
I've been good. I've been playing nothing but Starfield. And really just literally all my free time has been going on playing Starfield. I'm just looking on my Steam account. I've clocked in 77 hours on the game, which is just unreal.
That's insane. I've just got 60.
So I've been playing it. I have finished it. I just need someone to talk to about it because obviously I knew about what would happen and like, how it would transpire before I sort of called time on it. But like my brother's playing it, Tyler's playing it, and they're just like, oh yeah, I just want to experience everything. I'm just like, get to the end of the game.
No,
so I can talk to you about it.
I don't understand why you had to rush through it. Like, this game is so vast. Why are you rushing through it?
Because it's, I don't know. I just there's a turning point in the game where you're like, oh, I need to finish the game,
and I'll get there.
But then
in my
but
time.
then you're like, you could literally. I want to go back and do everything I've done, but now that I've started the game again, I can do everything again, and I'm like, there are perks and pros and cons to it, but like, yes, I've very enjoyed it. I really enjoyed it. I will still keep playing it, but yeah, I'm just sort of working out the sitch with it, and trying to work out the benefits of it. In terms of drawing, I haven't done anything. I watched Nimona.
You did watch Nimona,
yeah, which was a CNC recommendation. A very good recommendation.
Part of the video that we've made. So we've started doing a series of social media videos. We've started with why animation, and I think it's me and Josh kind of thought it's time we start diving into why we do what we do on this show in a bit for the love of it. Obviously, the whole show is about why we, what I mean, but like, why did we pick those subjects? Why have we picked video games? Why have we picked digital drawing? Why have we picked animation? And we've started with animation. So, and part of that was Nimona. And Josh watched the video and went, I want to watch Nimona. And you loved it.
True story.
And there's a good segue, actually, because that kind of nicely goes into what we'll be talking about today. So we can save your thoughts for Nimona. Well, yeah, save your thoughts for Nimona for when we talk about the subject. So we haven't ended our Starfield series. We're doing a two-parter for this next sort of theme, and we're going to be exploring why children's animated shows feel a bit adult-centric these days, and a lot of beloved properties kind of feel like they're not just geared for children, and that's been going on for years, right? Pixar, etc. A lot of Cartoon Network shows, but nowadays they feel a lot more adult-centric, and it feels like the target audience has shifted slightly. So we're going to be exploring that today. So, Josh, shall we get into it?
Let's get into it.
So this week we will be diving into animated films and TV shows geared towards children that seem to be very adult-centric. Lots of themes that would go over children's heads. And that's been a trend for years, long time, right? Yeah. But lately, it feels like they're pushing the boundaries of what is, acceptable in a kids show, to the point where it kind of feels like they are just trying to target older audiences these days, which I don't personally have a problem with. I think it's great.
No,
I think it's just an interesting case. No. And these things have existed for a long time. Pixar have been doing it for a lot more subtly for years. But like, if we can take some examples from Pixar, in Toy Story 2, when Buzz sees Jessie, his wings just pop open, like, that's a very obvious innuendo. Or in Toy Story 1, when Woody ends up at Sid's house and there's all those like weird, and there's like the legs and there's like a fishing hook, and it's a very obvious like metaphor for a hooker.
Yeah.
Lots of things. What's the other one? Oh yeah, so in Cars, when Lightning McQueen's on the track and the two like female cars flash their lights, very obvious, right? The innuendos are there for ages, and those things have existed. Ka-chow, sure. Those things have existed for a long time, and I think, as time has gone on, gradually they've become a little bit more obvious. And I think a real turning point, as Josh pointed out to me earlier, was Shrek. Shrek has had a lot of has lots of jokes across all four films that you go, like in Toy Story 2, when he's like literally, when there's that bit where they're being chased and he's on a white Bronco, and like it's a reference to OJ being chased because he was driving a white Bronco, and then they pull out the catnip and he's like, that's not mine. So funny. But those are things that still would sort of subtly go over children's head, and you watch it back when you're older and you go, holy crap, do you know what I mean?
But with Shrek itself, that's very on the nose. Like, you can see there's some of the things, like one of the references that Donkey says is it sugar honey iced tea?
Yeah.
You know, to obviously to note the swear word.
Yeah.
And you know,
it's an acronym, isn't
a
it?
better out than in is what you said off air. I think it's one of those one of those films where
So
you can
start. Go on. No, go on. You finish first.
Where you can watch it and you can see, and any age can watch that film and be
Yeah.
And be happy with it. You can see the visuals. You know, you could start at a young age and watch Shrek and go, "Oh, look, pretty colours on the screen," but you could be a 45-year-old man and watch Shrek and go, "That's hilarious." And I think what we're discussing today is that we're moving. The dynamic has shifted a lot. To instead of it being like I watched something that was a PG and it was Nimona. It felt very adult all the way through. Like, stick it to the man, bring down the regime, as it were, the tower. It was all about, you know, getting rid of, you know, that thing that's like controlling everybody and bring down the institution. That's it. And that it felt like it was driving a message across in the film. And I thought, yes, kids are going to see this and go, oh, pretty colours and pink dragon and pink this and, you know, she's really funny and this and that. And, you know, the joke's going to go straight over people's heads. But it was like, you know, death to the institution, bring that down. And it was also quite bloody in a sense. Like, and I said, like, we're not the fun police. Like, but it definitely didn't feel like a PG film. Like, and I think I was watching it and I was like, where does the line stop? Like, when does it become a 12A? Like, I have a child, and you know, for me, we talked about this yesterday. I was playing GTA when it came out, GTA 3, and I was young, and so was Tyler. And I don't think he's done any irreparable damage.
I've never played GTA until I turned 18.
Yeah, Tyler was younger, and when he played it, and
I would never do such a thing, Mum.
No, he was an angel of a child, and I played it and I enjoyed it. I don't think he's done any like irreparable damage. That being said, I am a parent of two. I am a parent of my son, and so is my wife. And my wife has a very different approach to it. I would show my child Predator at 10 years old and be like, "Look how awesome this is." Whereas Molly's like, "No, he's going to be watching kids' cartoons."
Yeah.
And like now,
I'm inclined to agree with Josh.
Yeah, but like now, I'm like, would I show my child Nimona? Like, would I show my child Puss in Boots: The Last Wish? Because I know my brother, his daughter, she loves Puss in Boots. Great film. She thinks colourful, pussycat, great, awesome. Cries in fear the moment she hears Death's whistle. Like, that to me, when I watched it, I was like, Death is terrifying in this. Like, that is a terrifying character. And I'm a 31-year-old man, and I was like, that is the most terrifying villain I've ever seen in an animated show. Yeah. So, to market that and go, well, it's a kids' animated film. It's definitely not. Like, you know, I would argue that, like, even the Minions films, they're more in line with, like, the Toy Story of, like, the subtle jokes and the subtle things. But, like, things like Puss in Boots, Last Wish, Nimona, very like young adult kind of stuff, and not stuff that should be sort of like marketed towards children. And I think, like, you know, foreshadowing. I think it goes deeper than that. I think it even starts at a younger age, but we'll get into that at a later date. But for now, like, there has been a shift in the dynamic. In terms of like what is adult and what is younger anymore.
I think as time has gone on, animation has become a genre that has remained popular, and people do still want to watch them. A lot of properties like Clone Wars, for example, or Avatar: The Last Airbender, those are two very popular TV shows that existed a long time ago. You know, Avatar launched in 2003 and remains popular 20 years later. You know, it's getting a reboot, a live action one, but you know, those shows were very they were children's shows, right? They were both on either Nickelodeon and Cartoon Network. And whilst they don't necessarily have jokes in them that were geared for children, I'd say the comedy elements of those shows are definitely for children. But it deals with a lot more themes that are adult based, you know. They're both dealing with what's, you know, I don't even know how to describe it. They're both dealing with oppression. Both of those shows are dealing with a force of oppression, and they're fighting back against it. Clone Wars is literally about a war, right? Avatar is about a force that have basically, essentially, taken over the world. You know, they've colonized the world as the Fire Nation, right? And the Avatar's been asleep for a long time, and essentially is trying to save the world. And both of those shows deal with themes like poverty. They deal with war-torn sort of like damage and the repercussions of those sort of things. They both deal with suicide. They're not very in your face, and for a lot of people watching them, like I watched Avatar as a kid, and I've watched it as an adult since, and I watched Clone Wars as a kid when probably it was came out a bit after, so I was about 13 when it came out. I watched it, but a lot of the things that it dealt with when I was a kid probably went straight over my head. At the time, I was just like, "This is cool." Cool action, like Aang, you know, he's learning all these abilities. He's bending fire, water, earth, air. He's doing it all, right? And he's got the cool bison, like, with Appa. You know, you've got Sokka, who's awesome. You've got Katara, who's awesome. Toph is just in a league of her own, right? You know, she's the baddest bee. And then you've obviously got Clone Wars, where we meet Ahsoka, and she is one of the coolest Jedi. And throughout a lot of Clone Wars, we see Anakin battling the dark side a little bit. Like, there are very visual references to him being Darth Vader quite often in the Clone Wars, and that coming, and we see Darth Maul return. And when we first see Darth Maul, he's like got spider legs. He's very terrifying. There's a lot of terrifying images in both of them, and not to mention in Avatar, bloodbending.
Yeah.
That was in the actual Avatar show. That is a horribly evil thing. Someone can bend someone's blood and essentially kill them with it, which is, you know, an awful ability to have. So it definitely deals with some things. And at the time, you're probably thinking, like, from an outside perspective, if a parent was watching at the same time as a kid was watching it, you'd both have a very different visual experience, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's the argument we're trying to make here, really.
I think that I agree. Going off the back of Avatar, obviously they released a more adult-centric version of the series when they brought out Legend of Korra. Like, I would argue that Korra is not a children's show at all. Like,
it obviously still is, though, because it is Nickelodeon, but I agree.
It's a lot more mature in that sort of sense, and there is a lot more blood-bending stuff and people, you know, gangling about.
It's outlawed, isn't it? Like, in Korra, bloodbending is outlawed.
Yeah, and it's there's some horrific imagery and, like... And I think that had a dynamic shift as well of being like, we've made Avatar. It was the fun get together, you know, let's go do the beat the oppressors and you know, sort of subtly do it. I feel like that when that changed, when Korra came out, it was more in your face. Like, you know, Toph is just cantankerous in it. The whole, like, in the last season, she's just... So, I want to stay alone, I want to be in exile, I want to do this, I want to do that. And I'm like, I think that's quite funny, in a sense, but I'm, you know, again, 31, and I can appreciate it, and I think that a lot of the stuff that happened in it, I was more invested in it because it was more adult. I think I preferred Korra than I did to Avatar because I feel like it was more catered to the people that had grown up with Avatar, matured into young adults and old adults, as it were, as we both are, and then they sort of said that's our target audience. People have seen the original Avatar, loved it, but want a more mature take on it.
Yeah,
but it's still a kids show because it's on Nickelodeon and it's a cartoon. you know, and that's the thing. And I think that there is a big change in the industry at the moment where they are being less subtle about it. Like back in the 80s, they were very, you know, oh, there was this, and there was this, and it's like, oh yeah, that joke, you know, like there's the Batman in the 90s, great TV show, amazing, great, you know, pioneered animation. It was fabulous. There were certain scenes in there where you'd watch it and it was like, oh, Harley Quinn's being a bit naughty, and for a kid, straight over your head. For an adult, you're like, okay, should my son be watching that? But it's so blurry you won't pick up on it unless you're an adult.
No, and I think the reason it works is because when you're a kid, you're just so oblivious, right? And when you're an adult, you think about it more. You're like, whoa, you kind of like second guess everything, and you're like, whoa, maybe this isn't. But that kid is just watching it and thinking nothing of it. Like it's just they're just seeing the images. They're probably not even sure what the story is. That you know, it's very weird. Like I find it odd when I watch something that I loved as a kid, and I'm like, this is so different to what I remember. And I think a large problem, because you know, things that, like we say, don't age well. It's not necessarily that the product hasn't aged. It's just that it's not. We kind of quickly realised we're not the audience for it. Like, I watched the first Toy Story film, and I don't think the first Toy Story film has aged that well. Like, but that's from an animation perspective, it's a bit clunky. But Toy Story was one of my favourite films as a kid. I watched it back to back every day, right? And just now I watch it these days and go, it's not landing the same way it used to land. And I think maybe I think the ones that we watched a lot later are better. I think things like Toy Story 3, you know, deals with a lot darker themes, like the head turning around and the baby, the monkey clapping, all of them almost falling into a pit of fire, and what's the bear called?
Lotso,
right? Lotso then just being like a double-crossing villain the entire time. Like, it's definitely... Toy Story 3 for me feels like a film that it was for the fans of Toy Story 1 when we were kids, right? It doesn't feel like a film for kids that were kids in 2010 when it came out, right? So that, for me, Pixar is one of those things that is, I think, they've fallen out of that a little bit. I don't think they've quite got the nostalgia on their side as they once did, but I think nostalgia ruled a lot of Pixar for a lot of the 2000s and the 90s, which is why I think it works, because there's a lot of nostalgia in them and there's a lot of jokes for adults. And Toy Story being the first didn't really have that. Which is why I don't think it aged well.
Well, two that sort of stand out to me. Well, there's three that stand out to me recently. One is Puss in Boots, which we can talk about, which is obviously the blood, death. That's a given. We've discussed that. But the other
attacks.
two that stand out to me, the panic attacks, the dealing with mental health. Like, it's fun and it's good and it's a phenomenal film. And, you know, kids are going to look at it and go, wow, Spectacle is fighting a big kaiju bell stone thing. You know, and he beats it. Wow,
I mean,
great.
that is cool.
It is phenomenal, really well animated, looks awesome. But then you deal with, like, oh, he's having a panic attack because he's scared to die, you know, and all the different reasons as to why he dies and how that comes about and X, Y, and Z. And you're like, this is very, like, you know, I'm unnerved by it. I'm uncomfortable with it. You know, where was that shift? The other two, which we've both seen, one is Turning Red. You've seen Turning Red, haven't you? Yeah. One is Turning Red, which deals with, again, oppressive family member trying to be sort of, you know, to be not who you want to be. The main character is going through puberty. Her thing to deal with that, or that happens in their family, is she turns into a giant red panda. And then you've got some colossal panda attacking this city, and it's like, right, this is a very adult subject that you're making a film that I would say is a U or a PG, you know, and it's like U and PG means anything from like 0 to 10, You know, I would say. Anything above that, well, no,
I think it's 0. I would say 0 to 12.
0 to 12. Yeah,
Considering the next
makes more sense. Yes, that makes so much more sense. Yes, 0 to 12, and but that film I would like. I would probably make my son watch that at 11. You know, just so he's got a bit of a grasp on it. He knows what's going on and knows how things go around. The other one is Lightyear. Now, Lightyear has a few moments in it, a few ridiculous moments that people kicked off about. Shame on you. Not you personally, not you, but like our listeners who
I didn't,
shame.
I didn't personally kick off about them.
Yeah. No, you didn't. So, shame, it's 2 seconds, but that's a very adult thing that's put in there, and it's you know, and the adults kicked off about it because the kids didn't care.
Yeah.
The other side of that is the quantum sort of space travel, that time works in a different way, that every time he leaves he comes back like 5, 6, 7 years later and ends up going like 50 years in the future, you know, and how space time travel works. If you're a 9-year-old, you've got no clue what's going off. Like,
well,
that's a story point that people are just like, right, this is some like Avengers level like plot.
So for me, if we're going to talk about specifically Pixar films that I think, you know, really target adult themes as well as being kid friendly, Inside Out for me is it's one of probably my top 5 animated films of all time. And I went to see that in the cinema with my mum and I cried watching that. And I don't know why. I just was like, Mum, do you want to come see this film with me? And she was like, yeah, sure, why not? So we went and watched it. And one of the really, it sticks with me throughout the whole of that. It's stuck with me 8 years later, right? That film came out in 2015. And there's the bit where Joy is obviously trying to keep all the memories, like, happy. But sadness can't help but touch them, right? And every time she touches them, she turns to sadness. And there's this pinnacle moment in the story where Riley is obviously going through Riley, who's the human who all the emotions are attached to, right? And Riley is having this moment where she's like conflicted, she's missing home, she tries to run away, all these happy memories like start to turn to sadness. And then there's this kind of moment where Joy's like, you're making Riley sad, we don't want Riley to be sad. But then there's this kind of message that you can't have joy without sadness. And for me, that always really stuck with me. And for an adult, for a child watching that, you'd just be like, oh, bright colours.
Sad blue thing.
Move on.
Yeah.
But I watched that, and I'm going to get a bit deep here. I watched that just after I'd come out of a relationship.
Nice.
And it hit home, right? And I was, like, sobbing watching this film, because it's true. Like, it's one of those adult things, and it's like one of those things as a kid is like that nostalgia, and it's one of those things that will stick with you forever. I'm always spending my time like thinking back to times where I was really happy, and it's like those memories feel like they're not tainted now, and that's the kind of the impression that Joy gets, is that sadness is tainting them. No, those memories are not just happy memories anymore. They're sad because they're gone. And they are just memories now. And it's a really important message. And I think it's one of those adult themes that's like, I like it. I like that we see this in films. I think it brings a sort of togetherness. And we see this in we see these adult themes. It brings a sort of togetherness that I really enjoy about these sort of films. Or TV shows.
Yeah. Yeah. There's loads. And I think that for me, the things that stand out the most in these films and TV shows is the violence. Like, I'm a sucker for a good violent TV show, but when it's something,
really are.
I am. So I'm just am. Like, when it comes to like Nimona, for instance, she gets an arrow in her leg, he pulls it, but blood starts spurting out, and you see the arrow in her leg, like at a distance you see the arrow. Oh, you've got an arrow in your leg, and it's not violent, blood is not gushing out or anything like that. But then it sits down.
It's a small spurt, isn't it?
Yeah, the arrows, you can just see the arrowhead, you can't see your leg. He twists it, a blood spurts out of it. Like another part of it, one of the characters gets stabbed in the chest by a sword, and you think, oh, it's an off-camera thing, you're not going to see it. You see the sword go through this guy's chest. you know, and you see what happens. You see, well, she does the action, and you see the sword sticking out of this guy's chest, and you're like, right, okay, this is hardcore. And for me, thinking back, like, there's only a few films that it was very noticeable in, and it was noticeable because it had never happened before. Like, if I think back to, like, the Little Mermaid, or I think back to Snow White, or any of those, like Lion King, yes, Mufasa dies, but he doesn't die bloody, and there's never a drop of blood in it. And if you think about the films that have come out since then, like that are Pixar, that are animated, that are digitally, whichever you want to think, things that stand out to me are Tarzan, when he's fighting Sabor, and he either gets is clawed by Sabor, or he scratches his spear on Sabor, and it cuts his shoulder, and you're like, that's blood in an animated Disney film. My God, madness. Even thinking, just as I was thinking then, even at the end of the film, spoilers, when the main bad guy dies, he dies by getting hung on a branch, and it silhouettes him, his body, hung there in a tree. Like,
yeah,
you know, for imagery, that's like God. Like, and when I watched that as a child, I never knew that had happened. I never even, clocked that had happened, and that it was just a flash of light. I never even clocked it. Watched it recently, I was like, God, that's hardcore. Like, that is hard. Another one, going down the animated route of digital animation, Incredibles. You know, he gets sliced in the arm by the big robot thing. It like comes down and slices across his arm, and I was like, oh, digital blood, you know. And they stand out to me. Yes, it's not like people getting their arms ripped off and stuff, but it was like, it was never done. It was always done in like a you've now crossing a line kind of thing. Like, blood never shows up in them.
Yeah. So let me ask you a question, but before I ask you that question, let me make a point to back up that question first.
Yeah.
So we're seeing a lot of mature themes, whether it be, you know, things that happen in our everyday life, dealing with our emotions, dealing with getting older, dealing with just day-to-day life, like mental health, etc. Or we're seeing things like darker storylines, like, you know, in a lot of the action, is becoming a little bit more daring. But they're becoming, but these are all in things that, when I think of animation that's really good, they're successful. It is things like a lot of Disney movies, a lot of like Avatar, Clone Wars, Mona, right? Puss in Boots, all things that are really, really, really great, and they're doing really well. And these all exist in children's animation, but then when you flip the coin, I guess, and look at adult animation, it's a lot of stupid jokes, like stupid jokes that don't really pay off. They're a bit sort of self-contained, and we don't really get a lot of adult animation that kind of feels like it deals with those themes, probably in a more darker sense, or in a more mature sense. Why do you think when it seems to be adult animation, it's kind of just corny, dumb stuff that isn't great? But considering that a lot of adults want to watch things like Clone Wars, Avatar, Korra, Kipo, things like that, you know, why do you think the adult ones seem to be getting the worst end of the deal here?
I think it's because they're not restrained by a certificate. I think that...
So does that mean then, if you whack a high age rating on it, you're just expecting it to be crap?
Well, no. So, like...
We had a lengthy discussion about things like this yesterday.
Yeah.
Things that happen for no reason don't land well if there's no point to it.
No, and I think that there's two sides to that. I can give you two examples. They're both from the same company, and they're both very successful in their own rights. They're both made by the same people. You probably don't like either of them. One is Rick and Morty.
I do like Rick and Morty.
Okay. And the other is Solar Opposites.
I've not actually watched Solar Opposites.
Now, Rick and Morty is that... I would say it's a 15. automatically.
It is
I'd say
15,
yeah.
isn't it?
I would say it was a 15. I say it's very violent. It's got a load of bad language in it, and it is catered towards adults. And there are a lot of unnecessary jokes in there, but it does balance it with like fun episodes. It's good as a whole. There's some really standout things in there. The animation's clean, beautifully shot, colours, and it's really good. But it is very like adult. However, it's not as adult as Solar Opposites is. And to its detriment, I was like, when I watched Solar Opposites, I'm like, oh, there are the makings of Rick and Morty in there. Like they've got there's a whole subplot where basically one of the aliens is stealing people and he's putting them in his wall as like little ants. So he's got like an ant colony of small people, and they create their own small civilization. You know me, anything miniature, I'm there. You know, and it's a great subplot about like trying to escape and that sort of side of it. But then on the other side of that, because they're like, right, we've made Rick and Morty, we can go only so far with Rick and Morty, and we can go pretty far with it, but we can only go so far before we alienate our audience. Solar Opposites is the exact solar opposite of that. They go so far off in some episodes. Like there's one where I don't know if this will be edited out, but I can't explain it. I can't go around it without explaining it. But basically, there's two teachers that have relations, as it were, and one of the jokes in there is that the teacher is always eating the other teacher's behind. And it's like, oh, that's a fun little innuendo, and it makes a joke about it. But then it shows you him doing it. Like she literally like cuts to it. Teacher pulls her pants down, and cartoon character's head goes down, and you can't see her, but she's like stood at front of this desk, and bum comes out, and he's like comes down, and I'm like, what? Like shock value of like, what's going on here? Like, you know, what am I watching? And it's about obviously aliens that come to Earth if people haven't seen it, and like that sort of experiences. But they lose like that sense of like what's funny and what's not funny, and then like because it's not like mad. I would argue that Solar Opposites is an 18. I would say that I would definitely say it is. But because Rick and Morty is a 15, it knows where it needs to go. It knows to keep the story where it needs to be. Have your gratuitous moments like when Morty goes on a rampage and people are getting sliced in half, or you know, it uses a power that makes everybody make love to each other. I love that. You know, it's fun, but it's not like filthy fun. Because Solar Opposites have got that, well, we can do whatever we want. We've made Rick and Morty, and this is let's do what we want. Like Tyler says, it's unnecessary, and it doesn't land. It's just like, right, you're just being gratuitous for the sake of being gratuitous. You're being violent for the sake of being violent. Like, it doesn't make sense at all.
I think it's what I find really annoying is if we look at a comedy film and like let me take Shrek for example, and then you've got adult animation like Big Mouth. I use this example off air, right? Shrek. The reason those films work is those jokes, they're funny, right? They land well enough that even adults would go, "That's hilarious." I still could watch Shrek, 22 years on and go, "That's hilarious," right? And then I'll watch something like Big Mouth, and it's all just really corny jokes about sex and farting and pooing, and I'm just like, it's not funny.
I agree.
It's just not funny. And it's so grotesque to the point that I'm like, who is your audience here? Because I don't, like a lot of people that I'm friends with, and granted, we're not the only people in the world, that's fine, right? But a lot of people that I'm friends with wouldn't find that funny, and I just don't understand it. Like, I want to see more adult-based shows. Like, I know you don't like it, but BoJack Horseman, for me, is a very well-rounded show for what I would consider funny. Like, it deals with mature themes, like a lot of children's animated shows do, but it also does comedy in the right way. And I think The Simpsons has done that very well. Granted, not so much these days, but back in the day, The Simpsons was really funny, but it was dumb, but not too dumb. And it dealt with some real serious issues. And I just don't think we get that a lot anymore. So I think because there's clearly a market for adults that want fun but mature content, but that isn't corny or just stupidly like, we have no creative barriers, let's just do whatever we want.
Velma,
right? Ridiculous. We won't talk about Velma. But it's odd to me that, you know, children's shows are doing a lot more adult comedy more successfully, or adult entertainment more successfully than adult shows are. And it's a shame to see that, really.
I think going back on your Big Mouth thing, I enjoyed Big Mouth for the first season. I thought, did I enjoy the second season? I enjoyed it. There were a few funny bits in it, but I think it quickly outstayed its welcome. Like it was, there were a couple of things that were quite, oh yeah, that's quite funny. Oh yeah, that's quite interesting. And you know,
then they did a spin-off show, didn't they?
Yeah, didn't even bother with it. I think I started the third season or the fourth season. And I was just like, this is just terrible. I'm bored of it now. I'm sick of the little kid trying to have sex with his pillow. You know, I'm out. You're too far with it now. BoJack, your point as well, is an 18 certificate. You know, and I sound like a fun police. I love, you know, more the merrier. Like, you know, make more action heavy films, like, you know, or TV shows. One that does spring to mind, which I don't think you've seen. What is it called? The Channing Tatum one, where he plays George Washington.
I have no idea.
What's it called? Let me...
But a good adult animation that's not a comedy. Invincible.
Yeah. Let me just Google this. Invincible is exactly that. But that's very violent. Like that. That's not a kids show though.
No. That's what I'm saying. It's an adult animation.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. More stuff like that is what people want, right? You know, that was a very successful show. I mean, we waited far too long for a second season, but
so excited.
Make more stuff like that. Like, don't just do dumb payoff stuff, because I'm not interested. I don't want to see Big Mouth.
So, the film we're trying to take him in is a diabolical, just car crash of a film.
I mean, if he's playing George Washington, it sounds diabolical.
Well, imagine George Washington, but just roided up. It's called America, the Motion Picture.
Oh, it sounds horrific.
Right.
Not terrific. Horrific.
The animation is just weird. They're all bros. They're all huge. They're all jacked. It's nuts. And like, you know...
Looking at it now.
You'll see the animation, but at the end of it, when they're like doing the Declaration of Independence, one of the jokes is like, oh, one of the fifth amendment is, you know, your right to bear arms, or whatever it is. The First Amendment is right to bear arms, and he just starts giving everybody AR-15s, like right at the end of the film, and I'm just like, oh no, like no.
So yeah,
no.
It's a bit weird, and like. I know I've recommended it, and I've watched it, and I really liked it. But Agent Elvis, that was also one of those things. I was like, it's funny, but I was like, this is ridiculous. Like, it's just ridiculous.
Like he's with the Manson family in episode 2, isn't it? Is it episode 2 or episode 1?
It's
with the Manson family.
2,
yeah.
Like, well, Elvis is killing the Manson family. It's ridiculous. Yeah. Obviously, yeah, there's a lot of adult shows that work, but for me, a lot of the most successful ones, like Archer, BoJack, in the comedy era, in the comedy sort of spectrum, and then you've got things like Arcane or Invincible. You know, those are the sort of shows I want to see more of. Those are the sort of shows, for me, those four, right, as an example, that feel like shows that where people like me watched shows like Avatar as a kid that wanted something like that, but felt like it was dealing with a lot more themes that just wouldn't be okay for children. Make that, yeah? People want that. Make more of that, yeah? I'm sure there is a market for people that love South Park still. Weird, right? And Beavis and Butthead. Oh, just awful. Not funny. Sorry, it's not. It's just not. I used to go to college with a guy that was obsessed with Beavis and Butthead, and I was like, you look like one of them.
Yeah.
I don't know whichever the blonde one is. Is that Beavis?
I think that's Butthead.
Right. Then he looked like Butthead. And I was like, you can see why you find this funny. You literally could be him. Yeah, not funny. King of the Hill, that was a good show. Really enjoyed King of the Hill. Futurama, really good.
Yeah, but that's like an adult version of The Simpsons, though.
Well, yeah, but The Simpsons is really good, and that's an adult show. It's definitely a lot more kid-friendly these days, especially since Disney have taken over.
Yeah, a lot more light-hearted.
Yeah, and they do all their shorts. You know, you can tell they're trying to change up the audience for that. Those are the sort of shows we want to see more of.
Would you say Family Guy is a kid show?
No.
Interesting.
Not a chance. Wasn't it an 18 when it started? Or at least a 15?
I would say it's a 15.
The first few seasons of that, I watched it when I was 14. Again, sorry, Mum, but if my mum knew what Family Guy was, she probably wouldn't have let me watch it.
You watched it when you were 15. Love you, Terry.
Probably younger. I was probably 14. About 2000. Yeah, considering it took a long time for it to become popular, though. Family Guy. It started in 1999.
And you asked me...
And it probably didn't pick up until about 2008.
You asked me off air, you was like, can I show your son Star Wars? And now I'm just like, He'll probably be watching Family Guy when he's 9-year-old.
No, what I mean is the Family Guy Star Wars trilogy.
Yeah.
Blue Harvest, something Dark Side. And what's the other one? Blue Harvest, something Dark Side, and... Oh my God, what is the other one called?
I can't remember.
Hang on. Family Guy, Star Wars trilogy. It's the third one. I can't remember what the third one's called. It's a Trap.
Yes, that's it.
Yeah.
They are great.
That's what. No, I will show. I will be showing your boy the originals. We're gonna watch all of them. He's gonna get to Revenge of the Sith. He's gonna lose his mind.
I know. We'll be videoing that. Oh, it's his father. Can you imagine like reliving that for the first time? Like,
oh God, I kind of did because I forced someone to watch the original films, all of the films with me, and they'd never seen, and to the point where they didn't know. Spoiler alert, by the way. To the point they didn't know that Anakin was Darth Vader. Like they had no knowledge. So we watched 1, 2, and then we got to 3, and I think you can sort of tell in episode 2 that Anakin is going to be.
Well, there's like foreshadowing it with like shadows and stuff, and
lots of it, right? So gets to 3, and he's like, "Henceforth, you shall be known as Darth Vader." And this person next to me was like, "What the?" I was like, and so I felt like I got to live it again, which was quite nice. So yeah, and it is a very rewarding feeling. So you'll definitely need to be there for the moment when Ren goes, "What?" Unless he isn't into Star Wars, in which you need to return him.
Adoption, yeah, 100%. Yeah. I had a similar thing with someone who hadn't seen any footage or any of the trailers or anything for No Way Home, and there was a big Marvel fan. Just imagine going into that blind.
I mean, I wish I could have gone into that film blind.
Yeah, imagine just walking, not seeing any promotional material, nothing at all, not a dicky bird, and then Doc Ock comes out of the freeway, and you're like, "What?"
Hey, Peter.
Yeah. Alfred Molina's there, and then you see Green Goblin in the sky. Like, what am I watching? This is my childhood, you know. And I watched it with him, and every time it had happened, I'd be like looking over, going, and he's like, I was like, this is the greatest thing ever.
We have digressed a lot.
We have.
So we will actually be continuing. We're doing a 2-parter on this subject, and we will be picking it up next week. But before then, Josh, what we always really want to know is, what is it? Tell us what your CNC recommendation is this week.
So my CNC recommendation is, and it's actually Tyler's fault because I haven't seen Samurai Jack, and I wanted to see that.
How's that my fault?
That is your fault because you brought it up, and I was should actually watch it. And he was like, you know what, it's so good, you should watch it. And I was like, I really should, but it got me thinking that, like, you know, is there any good, like, you know, samurai games, good, like, ninja games? And I was like, there is a couple. I can't do Ghost of Tsushima because that is a given. That is recommended by all. Everybody should watch that. So I'm going to do another one, which is a nice, cheeky little 2D side-scroller from an indie developer called Mark of the Ninja. And essentially, you are a ninja in this case, but it's all side-scrolling, and you've got to sort of eliminate targets by climbing into buildings and going through grates. And it's just really, really well made. Like, it's clean, the art style's beautiful. When you're under lights, everything's lit up. When you're in shadow, everything's dark. It's so good, and you can like take out lights by throwing stars at them, and it's not. When you look at it, it's not on the surface. You're like, this is just a little like 10-minute thing. But when you get into it, it's got a good story. It's about him getting his honour back, and it's great. So that is my CNC recommendation, Mark of the Ninja.